Welcome to There She Is, the podcast by Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania. This is a space for celebrating women in sport, the athletes, coaches, administrators, volunteers, and leaders who shape our sporting communities. We talk pathways, visibility, lived experience, and what works for women in sport right here in Tasmania and beyond, because representation matters and every story deserves to be seen. Hi everybody, it's Philippa here from Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Kayla Steindl today, who is the Assistant General Manager for the Jewels here in Tasmania, and we're incredibly excited about what's going to be happening in the space for women's basketball in Tasmania. Kayla has an incredible story and background as an elite athlete and now obviously working in management level, which I think so many women and girls are going to appreciate her incredible journey that she's had. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Now, for those who don't know you, can you give us a bit of an overview of how you got started in basketball and your career and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up in Washington State in a very small country town. And after I finished high school there, I went to college to play college basketball at Gonzaga University and had a really good team around me. So I was lucky enough to be drafted to the WNBA, which I didn't make, but it was a very cool week that I got to spend in that, I suppose, in that setting. And from there, I actually moved to Townsville, Queensland, to play my first 2 professional seasons, and then moved around a little bit, spent 1 season in Adelaide. Then we spent 3 or 4 seasons in Perth, where my husband was playing for the Perth Wildcats and I was playing for the Perth Lynx. And then the Jack Jumpers brought my husband over to play in August 2021. My son and I finished up my state league season in Perth before we moved over in September of 2021. And yes, my husband then had 4 seasons with the Jack Jumpers, and I was just playing state league with the Hobart Chargers. And then my husband retired from basketball, and we sort of thought that was the end of our basketball world. And then this awesome opportunity came up with the Jack Jumpers getting a license for a women's team. And so I hopped right back in. I resigned from my current job of teaching right away and was more than excited to hop on with this opportunity. It's been amazing. You know, I've been very lucky that I've, slotted in quite easily into this environment, as I knew, all of the staff in the office being a player partner before. So yeah, now I'm assistant general manager for the Tasmania Jewels, and I still can't really believe it.
Amazing. We're so glad to have you in this position here. Now, when did you realize when you were younger that, basketball was more than just a hobby or something that you enjoyed doing?
Yeah, so in the States, it's quite easy to play multiple sports because once you get to a certain age, you just play for your school. So ultimately, you just go to school and then you stay after school to play whatever sport that is. So over there, it's quite common for people to play 3 sports throughout the school year. So my family was really big on, my dad, I suppose, was really big on us doing 3 sports. So we were quite good at the other 2 sports that we did, but basketball was it just felt different, I suppose, for me. And going to college and being around quite a professional setting with players that went on to play in the WNBA was very eye-opening and something that I certainly wanted to be a part of. It's funny now looking back because I actually didn't fully comprehend that I could make a career, make a living out of playing a sport. How far behind I felt like I was. Whereas now, you see professional women athletes, all over the world and on all sorts of channels. And obviously social media has a big impact on that. But yeah, it wasn't until I was probably 21 that I realized that I could make a career out of playing a sport that I loved.
Yeah.
My college coach had a big impact on that. And I remember him saying, this is going to be your living one day. I thought, well, I'm studying to be a teacher. Like, that's what I'll be doing in a year's time. And anyway, fast forward a year, I was in Townsville playing WNBL and finished up with 7 professional seasons and having a child in between there. And it was sort of it just felt like that's what I was sort of meant to do. And it's obviously led me down a path that I could not be more thankful for.
Incredible. It even gave me goosebumps thinking about that progression and, knowing what's possible for you.
Mhm.
So you did a lot of sports. What age did you sort of
drop the others and just focus on basketball?
Well, it wasn't until I finished year 12. So I did volleyball and track and field up until I graduated high school. So I was 18. But like I said, over there it's a lot different. There's set aside time for each sport, whereas here, you can play the same sport all year round. So it wasn't until I finished high school, so I was 18, school in May, and then I moved away a few months later to play just college basketball. And so yeah, I suppose a bit late maybe that it was just a basketball focus, but I guess it was, I suppose, complementing for my other sports to play basketball. So yeah, it wasn't until I was, an adult really.
Yeah. And there's a lot more research now that shows having a multitude of skills and staying in multiple sports for longer actually develops you overall as a better athlete and not necessarily needing to specialize really early and,
Mhm.
burnout and things that happen with, specialized sports so early on.
Yeah, yeah. I think, we actually did funny because my sister and I are both over 6 feet tall, and she was a ballerina for, multiple years, 6, 7 years, and she was brilliant at it. And I actually did gymnastics for about the same amount of time. And it wasn't until my feet were dragging on the high bars that my parents finally let me stop gymnastics because I was actually too big for the equipment.
Oh, I love that. Now, I've met a few Tassie girls now who you're getting different opportunities and moving interstate or moving overseas. You obviously had a similar experience coming to Australia. How did that feel and what helped you sort of, deal with the changes? Was there any sort of culture shock? What made that smoother and easier for you?
Well, my sister actually had moved she was in Mackay when I first moved to Townsville, so that was, the major reason I suppose I came to Australia. I had a couple of options to go either, just off the top of my head from come here or go to Turkey at the time, and it was 2012 and, I was 22. I was old enough, but still a bit unsure of moving away from home. And I'd been to Australia a couple of times to see my sisters. I knew what it was like over here, and it was quite easy moving here. Knowing that I had family here and had met some other people along the way, and the coach that I was actually going to play for had coached my sister. So there
Oh,
was
wow.
lots of connection before I came over here. But once I got to Townsville and got into the professional setting, it was quite daunting. I suppose, maintaining those conversations frequently with my family back home was really important because it can be a bit lonely, if you're an international moving to somewhere new, provided I was very comfortable and happy here. I just, yeah, it was a lot to take on at first. And then I actually met my husband a couple months after moving in. So yeah, I suppose just, maintaining those connections and those phone calls and, um, yeah, I guess looking forward to what I was doing because it was quite exciting. And yeah, some of the best times in my life were those first couple of seasons playing down here.
Oh, amazing. Now, were there any times in your career that maybe you weren't selected for a team or there were sort of setbacks? And how did you manage your own mindset to deal with that and keep moving forward or finding different pathways?
Yeah, so I'd mentioned previously that I was drafted to the WNBA. I don't think that in my mind I was ready for that. I certainly wasn't confident that should have been there or that I would have made a team, which I sort of kick myself for now. But I had this brilliant opportunity right in my hands and got to the training camp and worked hard is what I thought I was working hard, which obviously, I wasn't. And yeah, the coach said, "You can stay and play in a practice game, but ultimately we're going to cut you and send you back, or you can just go back now and go to graduation with your teammates." And so at the time, I don't know if I should have stayed and played the game, but I ultimately got to go back and enjoy graduation, I suppose, with the girls that I'd spent those 4 difficult but rewarding seasons with. So I think that was sort of a turning point that I thought, "Okay, well, you're not doing enough. You didn't make this team." Provided making the WNBA is extremely difficult, and there's, 0.1% of female basketball players actually make it. So keeping that in mind, I wasn't doubting myself, I suppose, but just maybe a bit more extra motivation to keep me going. And when I got over to Townsville, and being in that professional setting, it was easy to, I suppose, adapt and want to grow in that setting. And we actually made the grand final those 2 seasons. Didn't win it, but we made it there. Yeah, I think being turned down the previous, 8 months before getting to a grand final was sort of a motivational piece for me to progress, enjoy basketball because it really could have set me back. But yeah, I think I was just excited for the new opportunity.
Did you have sort of any little mantras or go-to phrases that just really stuck or clicked for you?
Not really, not really. I just feel like my family was so supportive in a way that there was no pressure. They were just happy for me and excited for me. So the fact that I had sort of made it that far was, comforting knowing they were already proud of me. So I think, yeah, just sort of, I don't know, keeping in my own mindset, I suppose, that I had to keep working to get anywhere. Which ultimately never won a championship, but played in a couple. So
So it sounds like your parents had a really great influence on you. So for any parents who might be listening, what do you think that they did that were just such great nuggets that was so supportive for you?
they were at everything. I don't think they missed a game, which obviously is quite difficult, now with everyone working. Moms have to work. Like my children were in daycare 4 months after they were born, because I had to go back to work. Yeah, mom was a nurse, and she was, at most games. But my geez, sorry. My dad was at everything. So he was a police officer and over there. So he's a state patrolman. So essentially he could sort of travel the state. So he would be working and he'd show up 45 minutes down the road at a basketball game wearing his uniform and just, take his break to watch my game. So I don't know, I suppose, yeah, just being there for your kids, because my parents always were. My dad certainly was. And yeah, I've already, told my husband that we'll be traveling the world wherever our children end up to be there to watch them. Like I haven't missed a little athletics carnival or anything. So yeah, I think just showing up for your kids and not putting any pressure on them to perform. I think just enjoying it while they can, while they're young. Nobody's a professional at a young age.
It sounds like a really beautiful relationship, but tragically, you lost your mum just after your wedding and coming into a new season. How was that to deal with the grief?
Yeah, that was a difficult time. I sort of been sick for a while. So when I got to Australia, she actually went in for an open heart surgery not long after I landed here. So she was basically sick the whole time I'd been away. And yeah, it was just before our wedding, which was in Hawaii. So we tried to make it as easy for both sides to get to it. And anyway, she ultimately passed away about 6 weeks before my wedding. And then, yeah, going into one of my professional seasons. So that was, yeah, difficult. I mean, at any age to lose a parent. But yeah, it was quite I don't know, I suppose a turning point in my life, because I was getting married and we then had a baby about 12 months after we got married. And yeah, I suppose just trying to keep her spirit, I guess, alive in myself, because she never took anything too serious. So yeah, just trying to keep her spirit alive in myself and now my children. Yeah, I suppose is all you really can do.
Yeah. It must have been really tough at the time. And you obviously became a mum while you're still a professional basketball player, right? So full props to you. How did you find juggling motherhood and being a professional athlete and all the hats that you're wearing?
Yeah, it was hard, I suppose, but like anything, if you want to do something bad enough, you figure it out. Yeah, Noah was born in December 2019, so just before COVID had hit. And yeah, we were just sort of living in our own bubble of, that newborn stage. And my husband was playing for the Perth Wildcats, and they were currently in the grand final series. And because of COVID, it had to be cut short. And anyway, we all just ended up, in lockdown at home, which wasn't great, I'm sure, for the rest of the world. But for our small little world at the time, it was beautiful. Anyway, fast forward to the next WNBL season, we actually played in a bubble. So it was split between Mackay, Townsville, and Cairns. And that was, what was it, November and December of 2020. So yeah, we packed up my son and myself, and we turned 11 months while we were over there and started walking. So, hit a few milestones that Dad unfortunately missed out on. But it was really a cool time, because it was kind of showing a shift in the WNBL with the support for moms. And yeah, I mean, I was provided, an extra hotel room wherever we traveled for my care, which was either my sister or my mother-in-law or one of the, other family members. So yeah, like it was difficult, but and I suppose as an athlete, you always try and prove something and prove to yourself that you can continue to do something. And yeah, it was a good sort of fit because it was a shorter season given COVID. So there wasn't a lot of training, so it wasn't too physically difficult, I suppose, on our bodies because we were playing a lot of games in a short amount of time. So it was just game time and not as much practice, I suppose. So anyway, yeah, it was difficult, but I certainly learned a lot and learned I was probably a lot stronger and independent than I had thought.
So things like providing an extra hotel room obviously have a huge impact. Were there any other things specifically for mums that you just, big or small, were just like, oh, this is really helping?
Yeah, well, I was the only mom on the team, so, that's always exciting for the rest of the group to have a baby on board. So I think, Noah may have sat on my lap for a couple of minutes of each flight, but my teammates just really were helpful in that aspect. And yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect or what I needed as I'd never, been in that situation before. But the fact that, that support was there and the club was providing housing and food and whatnot for my mother-in-law essentially and my sister was yeah, just awesome. Remember when the coach had asked if I wanted to go, I said, "Well, I've got a son. Like I can't, that's what we'd previously thought." And anyway, yeah, that had changed a lot. And when we got to the bubble, there was actually another girl that had a little boy that was about the same age. So I suppose it was just, comforting knowing that you could do both and you were supported to do both. Because yeah, previously it was a lot different.
Yeah, interesting. So now you're working in management level. You're really young, like assistant general manager in this role. Tell us about what every day might look like in your current position with the Jewels.
Yeah, so it's sort of a special sort of time to come into my role because we don't actually have a team yet. So I've essentially been part-time for the last 6 months. I do go full-time next week, but sort of figuring out the whole business side of it and, what the club stands for. I've obviously been a part of the Jack Jumpers, almost since the existence, but as a completely separate sort of piece to it. So I've been the wife of the captain, which obviously holds a lot of value. But yeah, stepping into a role with the club was yeah, just very exciting. But yeah, like I said, I've been part-time, so I've just sort of been figuring out what the club is all about and how it works, professionally and commercially. It's been quite eye-opening, but now that I've going full time, we're in a position now where our coach will be announced very soon. So once that person is appointed, we can start building the rest of the team. So we've got to hire assistant coaches and we've got to hire physio and strength and conditioning and as well as, 12 girls to come play for our team. So it hasn't been too busy on my part just yet. It was more just observing and, reading a lot of documents and trying to figure out the business side of sport, whereas I've always been the athlete side of it. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do come March now that we've got a coach. And yeah, just I don't know, a lot of hiring of people and figuring out the puzzle pieces with the salary cap and who fits well together, and as well as trying to keep the Tasmania piece alive and trying to find the right people that suit this beautiful state.
Really exciting times ahead for sure. And we love seeing a woman leading the helm as well. So can you tell us a bit more about your leadership style and, have you adjusted that being, I'm sure there's a very male dominant space still. How do you shine in your special way?
Yes, like I've never been in a management role before. I'm quite an easygoing person, and I'm very happy to follow in the basketball world. I suppose when I'm on court, I feel it's a bit different. A veteran, much older than my, when I was playing last season anyway, a lot older than my teammates. The leadership, I suppose, was felt differently. Whereas now going into this role, I've never been in a management role before. I've never worked out of an office. I've never built a team. So I'm quite lucky though that I suppose my mentor or the general manager of basketball operations, so Darren Smith, I always call him my boss, which he hates, but I've got him to follow and to learn off of. So yeah, I think, if you know what you're talking about, if you've done all the work and the research and your homework, whatnot, then you should be confident in what you're doing. So yeah, I suppose just keeping my brain ticking over and figuring out how the business side works of it. Yeah, so I haven't really, I suppose, found my leadership style in this position just yet. I'm still very much a student and learning, but yeah, I've got, brilliant people to learn off of. And, we had the likes of Christine Finnegan as our CEO, who ultimately brought me into this role. So the fact that she had confidence in me or probably saw something that I didn't know I possessed, gives me good confidence in myself, I suppose, to know that, a leader like her would want me in this role.
Love it. There's so much you can figure out as you go, and it sounds like you have really incredible mentors to support you as you go along your journey as well. Are there any, as sportswomen, the obvious path is you can be an athlete or you can be a coach. Have you noticed any other particular career paths that girls or women might not be aware of that they can still pursue in sport outside of those roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we got to Tassie, I feel like there were quite a few women in the front office, that are ultimately in charge of putting the males, the athletes, on the court because of what a lot of the women were doing in the office. So, like our head of media was a female. Christine wasn't CEO at the time, but, she ultimately became CEO and rightly so, one of the best in the NBL to win a championship in the first 4 seasons. There's the basketball side of it as well. There's the strength and conditioning side. There's physio side. Sports psychologists, sports doctors. There's tons of roles that fit into a sporting role, not just the performance based, not just the people on the court or on the field. So yeah, I think if you do your research or just like watching a sporting event and seeing all of the people that are involved. When I came into this role, I certainly didn't walk into it. When I came into this role, I was watching games a lot differently and just watching all of the work that was happening. So all the people that are in the front office all week, certainly doing all of the work to prepare for the 40 minutes of the basketball game itself. And then you get to the game and they're still running around and they're still working. The activations that go on at quarter time or halftime of sporting events, that's all led by somebody from the front office, taking the cameraman around. I suppose those aren't really great examples, but there's just so many different ways to be involved in sport that aren't necessarily just being the athlete itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really great angle to just notice games in a different way. I was at the netball on the weekend. I saw the same particular woman doing laps and loving it.
Yeah,
Which is
and
really
setting
cool.
up. So, I have to admit, I didn't actually know that the front office staff for the Jack Jumpers set up the games and took down from the game. So they're there 12 hours before the game even starts, setting up the game essentially, and then packing it all down after the game. So they're actually there, a lot longer than what the athletes are.
Yeah, I have noticed a lot of women in your office. What's the rough percentage you think of women and men working there?
It'd be over half now, definitely.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. And have you noticed sort of any different challenges behind the scenes as being a woman in this space and how you've sort of navigated them or that have popped up along the way, either as an athlete or in management kind of roles?
I think, you know, being an athlete, being a female athlete, there's always going to be that pay discrepancy. So, sure, that's been a challenge. It wasn't too long ago, and even still now, some professional basketball players work 9 to 5, and then they go to practice or go to training. After they finish work, and in our bargaining agreement from the WNBL and the Players Association, we have to actually allow time during the day for girls to work if they prefer to. Because yeah, the pay is just it's a lot better than what it was, and it's obviously still growing. And there is a new CBA that's taken over, so the pay is growing. But yeah, certainly the pay discrepancy is something that every female athlete would bring up. And now seeing both sides of the business, like it's just, yeah, we've got a long ways to go, but obviously that's moving in the right direction. And then being just involved with the Jack Jumpers and seeing Christine Finnegan navigate herself in a man's world was quite empowering and amazing to see, because I'm sure she started out, as an assistant somewhere like I have. So I think seeing women in those positions is just, yeah, really powerful, even obviously for myself still. She's a terrifying woman. She is like the most brilliant. She just, yeah, walks into a room full of men and, basically owns the
Impressive.
space. And yeah. And what she's done for this club has just been phenomenal. So yeah, I would say for myself, I haven't really seen too many challenges. Again, being, not that far into the business, but I'm sure it is a lot different than it used to be as well. Like, welcoming women and, earning our spot at the top where we deserve to be.
Absolutely. And one of the best ways we can support that is by like getting along to the women's game. So we're really excited. When do the Jewels kick off?
Yeah, so it should be October. So the fixture hasn't been released yet, but this year the season started mid-October. So, might start a bit early given there's a new team coming into it and a couple more games to add to the season. So, yeah, October 2026.
Yay, super exciting. Now, last question. Sorry, two more questions. So first one, like you obviously live and breathe basketball. How do you keep the passion alive, or how do you keep that balance? Or do you have any other sort of creative outlet outside of basketball?
Well, we actually I'm obviously involved in basketball now, but my husband and I, obviously basketball was completely, what should I say? Our lives have always been based around basketball, and it still is, but obviously in a different lens now. But we, you wouldn't know we played basketball. We've done a really good job of not letting it consume our family life or our home life. Obviously, our children have been exposed to us both playing at a high level their whole lives, so that's sort of just ingrained in their brains now about basketball. But we certainly try and I shouldn't say keep basketball out of our home life, but yeah, try and find a balance anyway where it's not consuming everything. So yeah, we certainly do a lot of activities and a lot of other sports with our kids. So our children are quite active. So we do, at the moment we are doing basketball. Now that I say that, my son's doing basketball and he starts cricket tomorrow and little athletics. So we do try and spread the love and, show every sport some love, because that's how we grew up. My husband as well, he did multiple sports. He did 3 sports as well growing up. And yeah, sports is just who we are and who we've always been. So there's that's certainly now playing into our kids' lives.
Very cool. And what makes you most excited about the future for women and girls in sport, particularly in Tasmania?
Well, I think just the exposure of it all now, like there's obviously footy team coming in, which is going to be like just massive. The state, has been wanting a football team for ages. So the fact that we're here during that time is just brilliant. We're so excited to jump on that as well. Obviously we're coming in. There's talks that there's netball coming in. So there's obviously cricket already. Yeah, so I think it's just so exciting that girls in Tasmania, you can just, not walk down the road, but essentially see, multiple sports at a professional level, as high as it gets in their own country, in their own state. That's, I suppose, something won't be taken for granted, but, it might be elsewhere where they've been exposed to that or have access to those sort of things, certainly in Victoria and bigger major cities and states. So I think, yeah, it's just really exciting that Tasmania gets to see women in professional sport on so many different levels. And I'm, just really honored to play a small part in that. And yeah, it's really exciting to be on this side of it where I get to, basically, I don't know, build a team on good character. And I suppose true, Tasmanian values of basically hard work and that sort of underdog spirit out to prove a point. So it's just really exciting. I'm just really excited and really honored that I get to help build something that hopefully Tasmania can be proud of.
Absolutely. We're so excited for the Jewels to get started. And you've been such an inspiration. We love being able to see your journey and what's possible for other women and girls coming through sport and all different levels. So thanks so much for joining us, and all the best to the Jewels for their first season.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I'm really happy you had me on. So thanks, Philippa.
If this episode resonated with you, if you believe in visibility, representation and strong pathways for women in sport, we invite you to join us. Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania is a growing community of state sporting bodies, clubs, women and allies working together to make sport more inclusive, connected and supportive across our state. By becoming a WSRT member, you're helping amplify women's voices, stories and leadership, both on the field and behind the scenes. Head to wsrt.org.au/membership to learn more about becoming a member, because when we can see women in sport, we can be them.